À la femme, la fille, la mère et la reine, celles qui sont bien loin de nos lycées, nos collèges. Rien comme Afrique, d'Aïfé, dans nos contrées, je vois les mêmes prisonnières sans éducation, les victimes des mêmes pièges. Ramener nos femmes et filles sur les bancs d'une Afrique qui éduque. Où sont les hommes chantant les cantiques, les profs de cette lutte? Je vois des mâles convaincus, je vois des hommes engagés, je vois des flammes dans nos rues, je vois des femmes diplômées. Éduquer une femme, c'est fabriquer les pères de demain. Éduquer une fille, c'est éviter des drames sans fin. L'agenda n'a pas changé, ça reste le 2063. Pour toutes les filles de ce monde, faut y mettre toute notre foi. Je suis la Sud-Afrique, le Congo et le Tchad. Yeah. Tunisie, l'Égypte et le Maroc. Je suis la fille mauritanienne de l'Ouganda, du Rwanda. Éthiopie, de la Tanzanie. Yeah. Zambie, Burkina Faso. Je suis la jeune fille de la Côte d'Ivoire. Guinée équatoriale, l'île Maurice, Madagascar. Yeah.
Educate her. The agenda is still the same. Agenda 2063.
Hello? Hello? My God.
Yeah, I think it's going, it's now.
It's now okay.
Welcome, everyone. I hope that you can hear my voice loud and clear. My name is Marianne, and I am the team leader and management consultant for the KICS, the Knowledge Innovation Exchange KICS Africa 19 Hub. And I will be taking you through the first few minutes of today's session and then coming back here and there throughout the session today as a moderator. We are very pleased to have all of you here. We see that there are quite a few participants already, and we know the number will go up too as we go along. So today's topic is reaching and teaching the girl child in Sub-Saharan Africa in the pandemic era. So this is a topic with a lot of dialogue recently about how to reach vulnerable girls during the COVID-19 crisis. And I'm sure that you all have a lot to say about this topic. We will be opening it up a little bit later for a group discussion with all participants. But first, we're going to hear from some speakers today who are going to be weighing in on some of the practices that are happening in a few countries as well as across the region. So I want to also inform you that this is one of two workshops in the next couple of weeks. So today is the 25th of November, and we have this workshop. We are hosting this from the team, the KICS team at UNESCO ICPA. ICPA is short for the International Institute for Capacity Building in Africa, and we are based in Ethiopia. On December 7th, there's another workshop, which we really hope that you will attend as well. It's on preventing school-related gender-based violence. And the hosts are at the KICS team at UNICEF ISARO, the Eastern and Southern Region Africa Regional Office. So these two workshops are happening together by the same teams. So we really hope that you'll attend both of them to get a more holistic experience and to also contribute to a bigger discussion. So what will today look like? What will we be doing today? Today, participants will have the chance to deliberate on the unique needs of girl learners in the COVID-19 era in their own contexts and across the region. You will also get a chance to examine your own education systems, policies, and policy windows for the introduction or the strengthening of gender inclusive and gender responsive programs and interventions. You will also get to exchange regional evidence-based policies and practices in reaching and teaching vulnerable girl learners in Sub-Saharan Africa during and after the pandemic era, with the aim of capturing good practices so they may be scaled up. So you'll be doing three things: deliberating on the needs of girl learners, examining your own education systems and systems across the region, and exchanging evidence on what can work. So as you see, we have a very active, full, and exciting agenda today. After this brief welcome, you will get a chance to introduce yourselves, and we hope that you turn your camera on and your microphone on when you hear your name called out by Gabriel McBib from the KICS team. When he calls your name, you're welcome to introduce yourself very briefly, just your name and your organization and your country, and maybe hello in the language that you consider your home language or the language that you prefer. We'd love it if you say that. So you don't need to get into a very long narrative yet. And also, this is just for the participants from countries, because we will be introducing the speakers separately. All right, so we'll have that. After the introductions, we will then hear a presentation by Ian Caliwo, the project officer at the African Union's International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa. Mr. Ian will be sharing some relevance and research on the topic of gender responsive plans, innovations, and interventions. After that, for 15 minutes, then we will hear from Mr. Shem Bodo, a senior programs officer at the Association for the Development of Education in Africa, ADEA, and he will be sharing key findings from a KICS Observatory report. And we'll be sharing the link to the Observatory report with all of you too. Then we will move into a 10-minute Q&A moderated by Zamzam Diab from our KICS team at UNICEF Asaro. Then we'll move into two presentations by two countries. We're going to hear from South Sudan. We're going to hear about cash transfers and other strategies to retain girls in the pandemic era in schools. We will also hear from Zimbabwe about the recently revised plan to include pregnant girls and young mothers in schools. Then there'll be an open forum for about 30 minutes for you to share your own experiences and your own challenges and promising practices that you know about from your own contexts. Finally, we will end with a survey and an announcement about the resources that are available on this topic. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Gabriel for some introductions of the country.
Thanks, Marianne. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriel McBib, and I support knowledge management and communications for the KICS Africa 19 Hub. We welcome you once again to today's event on gender inclusive education. As Marianne mentioned, we'd like to ask participants to kindly and briefly introduce themselves. We kindly ask that you share the country that you're based in, your role, as well as your institution. Following introductions, we will have a group photo, so if everyone could keep their cameras on, that would be greatly appreciated. I've just shared in the chat the 4 items that we would like to learn more about participants, and apologies if I mispronounced your name, but I ask if we can begin. So we'll go in alphabetical order. So I ask if we can begin with Adam from Somalia. All right, if Adam's not there, then perhaps we can move on to Adama Jimba
My name is Adam Ahmed, the coordinator of Somali Coalition for Education for All. Hello, thank you.
We can hear you, Adam. Welcome.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. My name is Adam Ahmed, the coordinator of Somali Coalition for Education for All. We have been working with GBE and Oxfam under the program Education Out Loud program, and we have been member of the Africa 19 Hub with the team. Good to hear you and join this important program. We say in Somali language, Galab Wenaksan. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Adam. Could Aloise Faye introduce themselves, please?
Yes, it is Alois Faye. I'm from ADEA, I just joined now for the meeting.
Thank you. Could we have Ahmed Jimé go next?
Thank you very much. I am with you, and it's a pleasure joining this meeting.
This one is actually from the office.
No,
It's from the office.
it's like
All right, thank you, Ahmed. Could we have Mr. Alpha Ba go next?
Okay.
Also, if you're having any trouble with your microphone, also feel free to introduce yourselves on the chat, and you not necessarily have to introduce yourselves on here. So could we have Anne Wade please introduce themselves?
Good morning,
Okay,
everyone.
welcome, Alpha.
Sure. Good morning, good
my name is
afternoon,
Alpha Ba.
everybody. My name is Anne Wade. I'm based at Concordia University in Montreal. I'm coordinating a global grant entitled Using Technology to Improve Literacy in the Global South, and we're operating in Kenya, Bangladesh, and Rwanda.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alpha.
Hello, good afternoon or good morning from the Banjul. My name is Alpha Ba. I work at the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education as the head of the EMIS and the ICT department. So I'm happy to join you as I'm also the KICS focal point for the Gambia. Over to you.
Welcome and thank you. Anika.
Hi everyone, my name is Anika Rigoli. I'm based in Kenya with UNICEF SRO. I'm an education specialist and happy to be with you today.
Welcome. Clifford Ga.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Clifford Ga, based in Kenya, Aga Khan Academy. In KICS, I come in as a researcher. Thank you.
Thank you, Clifford. Could we please have Fatu go next? If Fatu's not with us, then can we please have Gertrude go next?
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello? Thank you so much. I think I'm given the floor.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Gertrude Namubiru, the Secretary General of African Curriculum Association and the coordinator representative CESA Curriculum Cluster. I'm glad to be in this meeting.
Thank you and welcome. Fatu, could you go next, please?
Right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fatu Yumkela. I'm based in Sierra Leone. I'm part of a consortium, a regional consortium supported by IDRC KICS for a study on accelerated education programming and girls-focused programming in West Africa. The other two countries involved are Ghana and Nigeria. I'm the country research manager for Sierra Leone.
Thank you. Welcome, Fatu. Could we please have Helen Crone go next?
Good afternoon. My name is Hélène Cron. I'm education specialist at the UNICEF regional office based in Nairobi. I'm covering the equity portfolio, including girls' education. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Could we please have Jean Traoré go next? On. If Jean is not with us, then maybe we can go back to Ahmed so they could introduce themselves.
Thank you, Gabriel, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ahmed Jime from the University of Maiduguri, and with me is Professor Adamu Umaru Zibama. We are in partnership with USAID. We are implementing a program for United States Agency for International Development on the countering complete activity to counter violent extremism. And this program actually entails, it has a component which addresses education issues, and especially education of the girl child and the vulnerable in this context of the northeast Nigeria. And I would like to also introduce my host here, who is Professor Adamu Umaru Zibama, the coordinator of the project.
Thank you, Jimmy. As he said, I am Professor Zibama. We are working in partnership with the United States Agency for International Development on post-conflict activities in the northeast Borno State. Now we know Borno State has been ravaged by the Boko Haram insurgency. It's over 12 years now since that thing started. It has led to a lot of destruction in the school system, a lot of out-of-school children, and a lot of displacement of teachers and all that. So we are trying to rebuild confidence, see what activities we can do to bring back the school enrollment system to help get confidence in ourselves, in peace building, so that the normalcy will return to the school system. We're also partnering with UNICEF to improve enrollment of the disabled and girls' education in Borno State, more especially Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, and Taraba State. So I've been working all around the globe for the past 1 year on this project, and we're happy to be part of this meeting where I'll be able to share some ideas and also gain very much from the actors of this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Thanks so much. Could we please have Jennifer go next?
Hi, I'm Jennifer from Associates for Change in Ghana. We are working with a consortium with members from Ghana, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone on a study on accelerated education models and girls-focused models across Africa. Nice to meet you all.
Welcome, Jennifer, and thank you. Could we please have Joe go next? In that case, Kennedy, would you kindly introduce yourself? If Kennedy is also not with us, then perhaps we can go to Kwadzani.
Thank you very much. My name is Kwadzani Nyanungo from the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education in Zimbabwe. Apologies from our permanent secretary. She's trying to connect through, but in case she doesn't, I will be able to make her presentation on her behalf. Thank you.
Thank you so much and welcome. Could we please have Mabor go next? If Mabor is having trouble connecting, then Mary, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Ajwang. I'm based in Uganda. I work with UNAIDS in Uganda, and I coordinate the Education Plus initiative, a joint initiative of 5 UN agencies that focuses on the empowerment of adolescent girls and young women in Sub-Saharan Africa with quality secondary education as a strategic entry point. I'm looking forward to the discussions today. Thank you.
And welcome. Could we please have Mohammed go next?
Hi everybody, my name is Mohammed Sharif. I am from Somalia. I work at the Ministry of Education, Culture and Higher Education. I work at the Department of Planning. And thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed, and welcome. Could we have Nabanja go next, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nabanja Nora from Uganda. I work with Antio Foundation Uganda. I'm the Education and Community Program Officer. Antio Foundation Uganda, we have programs in health, education, and livelihood. I'm glad to be part of this meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you and welcome. Olive, could you please go next?
Oh, hello, everyone. My name is Olive Budia from Kenya. I work at KICD, that is Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Thank you.
Welcome. Roderick, if you could please go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roderick from Zimbabwe. I'm with the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education in the Monitoring and Evaluation Unit. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Welcome. If Celine could go next.
Greetings, everyone. This is Celine Turan. I work as a research assistant at War Child Holland. We are a KICS Global grantee and conducting a research in Uganda, Chad, and Sudan, and part of the KICS Africa 19 hub as well. We're conducting research on War Child Holland's innovative education program called Can't Wait to Learn. It's nice to be here today and meeting with you all.
Thank you for joining us and welcome. If we could have Shane Bodo go next.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Shane Bodo. I work with the Association for the Development of Education in Africa, ADEA, as a senior programs officer. Our role as a regional organization is really to promote education reforms in the continent and also to champion Africa's voice on education issues at the global level. Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shane. Could we have Suleimana join us, please? Or introduce themselves.
Thank you, and good afternoon from Ghana. My name is Suleimana Yusuf, a program officer with the Girls Education Unit at Ghana Education Service. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Could we have Vaughn Gash? And again, once again, apologies for mispronouncing any names.
No worries. Hi, everyone. My name is Wongai. I am based in Canada, working with World Vision. We are currently coordinating a consortium for a literacy program, researching community networks that support the literacy program to enhance girls and boys literacy. Our KICS project is in Ghana, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Thank you.
Thank you, welcome, Wongai. Yvonne, if you could kindly introduce yourself.
Yes, Gabriel. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone.
My name is Yvonne Boya. I work with UNESCO ICPA as a male consultant for the KICS Africa 19 Hub project. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Zamzam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zamzam Daib. I work with the KICS project from UNICEF side, from Eastern and Southern Africa. Welcome, everyone. And as we say in Arabic, ahlan wa sahlan.
Thank you. And finally, we have Traore. If you could kindly introduce yourself. If Traore is not with us, I would also like to use this moment to ask anybody that perhaps wasn't given an opportunity to introduce themselves to please introduce themselves now.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon.
Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Please go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon. I am Adam Jimba Job from the Gambia, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Minister of Basic and Secondary Education, and also the GB focal person in the Gambia. It's a pleasure to be part of this session. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you.
My name is Joe Basakoli from Liberia. I am the GPE DCP focal point for Liberia. And also, I serve in the Ministry of Education as a project coordinator in the project delivery unit. It's a pleasure to be on this call. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Joe. I see Rechu's hand raised. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Patrick Rechu Jr. I'm working with the Untitled Foundation Uganda, representing our national coordinator, who will join us shortly. And in Untitled, as our team and Nora said, we work with promoting community-based health programs to support safe learning of school environments, promote gender-responsive systems, and promote institutional development. I'm glad to be part of this meeting, and God bless us all.
Thank you and welcome. If that is everyone, then perhaps I can ask everyone to switch on their camera so we can take a group photo. We have a wonderful, diverse group of people here, and it'd be great to see everyone's faces in one place.
Yes, can I introduce myself?
Yes, sorry. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm called Esther Kumu Achire. I'm the head of Gender Equity and Inclusive Education in the Ministry of General Education and Instruction. And I'm the focal person for Girls Education South Sudan, which is funded by UKH, that is, and supported also by Canada Global Affairs. And this is to support the girls' cash transfer to retain them in school. So I'm happy to have this opportunity to be in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so in 3 seconds, I will take a photo. So I'll do a countdown so everyone is ready. So 3, 2, 1. And then one more. 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you all so much. And I'll hand it over to Marianne to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Gabriel, and thank you everyone for those introductions. We do have a diverse group with us today, and it just shows that there's wide-ranging interest in the topic, and we really hope that you'll add your voices as we go along to the presentations. So today we're going to be hearing from organizations and from 2 countries. So I would like to, sorry, 1 second. I would like to draw your attention to a KICS Observatory report. A couple of months ago, the KICS Observatory that is commissioned to study Africa's educational systems responses to COVID, released a report, and it was titled School Reopening in Africa During the Pandemic. And we'll be hearing from some of the writers of this report today, from two of the organizations that took part in the research and the writing of the findings. So I would like to now introduce Ian Caliwo, the project officer from the African Union's International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa, to tell us about the research and relevance of this report and of this topic. So over to you, Mr. Ian.
Thank you, Marianne. My name is Ian Caliwo, and I'll be speaking on the presentation under the theme of gender inclusive and responsive strategies to reach and teach the girl learner in COVID-19 Africa. Next slide, please. The outline of my presentation will include the following: introduction and purpose, facts including data of school-aged children, issues facing girl learners in Africa, solutions on what works as successful policies and practices, as well as what could be done better in terms of emerging evidence. Next slide, please. The thematic on which I will be speaking on is important on behalf of our organization, the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa, which stands as an African Union specialized institution working on girls and women's education and is mandated to promote and advocate for gender equality and women's empowerment in Africa. Furthermore, the thematic of girls' education is of importance because it is a matter of basic human rights, and its non-fulfillment and enjoyment for girls poses a threat onto the trajectory towards human development, hence leading to increased poverty levels and lowered quality of life and well-being. To date, AUCF has endeavored to follow up on commitments through policies at global level, through the Sustainable Development Goals, and at continental level, the Agenda 2063 on girls and women's education, and particularly ensuring 12 years of quality education for every girl learner is still a far vision. Next slide, please.
Coach Abachu.
And key facts notes. Under this slide, we will provide an overview of the current situation using as main source the 2021 African Economic Outlook of the African Development Bank. Africa is home to 1,352 billion people, with half of them, that is 676 million, being female. 77% of Africa's total population is under the age of 35 years old, which by 2035 will constitute the largest working age population in the world. The children on the continent aged from 0 to 17 years old would be around 550 million. However, according to pre-COVID-19 data, dated 2020, according to UNICEF, the situation informs that 40% of children were recorded being in poor well-being status, namely without water, lower nutrition, lacking safe spaces, with little hope of completing basic education, and an estimated 1/3 of Africa's population recorded living in fragile conflict and violent contexts or situations. With the advent of the COVID-19, and now in 2021, 34.4% of Africa's total population is predicted to be pushed into extreme poverty. The health-related pandemic has also intensified pre-existing gender inequalities, resulting in widened gaps in terms of girls' access to digital learning, their own safety, as well as supplementing household care burden. School-related closures have likely impacted on human capital development and productivity, with a probability of reversing learning gains in light of an estimated 250 million learners recorded staying at home in 2020. Next slide, please. Under this slide, we'll look at what are the underlying issues, and due to time constraints, our focus will be on the key ones. During the COVID-19, reports are emerging of a greater likelihood of pregnant girls in Sub-Saharan Africa. And yet, we should understand that schools re-entry was impeded by already existing oppressive policies. It is our hope that with the current dynamic, changes will be influenced by the current education reforms on the continent, such as re-entry of pregnant schoolgirls after delivery accepted in Tanzania this year in 2021. The unavailability of disaggregated data collection, which prevents effective analysis and use to support decision-making, with a particular focus on vulnerable populations, including pregnant schoolgirls, girls with disabilities, and girls on the move to equally benefit from school. It became equally difficult to sustain support for children from poorer households in terms of psychosocial support, nutrition, cash transfers, and other basic needs often met through social protection programs. This has also led to an increased number of beneficiaries due to the COVID-19 impacts, affecting more households with increased gaps for girls in terms of support with school materials such as sanitary pads. Next slide, please. Under this slide, we'll look at what works as solutions. Through the GPE's Raise Your Hand financing campaign, an estimated $4 billion was raised to support mobilization of domestic and external financing of education on the continent. As key responses by African states, findings show that there has been adaptations made to teaching and learning in either hybrid or blended forms. There has been expansion of infrastructure or outdoor learning spaces, such as in Cameroon, Kenya, Malawi, Niger, Lesotho, Somalia, and Togo. There has been double shifts implemented in the Gambia. Guidelines have been set with different schedules for different groups of learners, like in Senegal, and remedial classes have been implemented in Burkina Faso, Eritrea, and Mozambique. There has been accelerated learning opportunities for other learners, which have been set up in Gambia, Sudan, Togo, and Zambia. Through the Africa Educator campaign strategy initiated by the AUCFR, there is increased awareness which has been raised around the necessity of getting girls back to school post-COVID-19. Other proposed strategies were in favor of the reintegration of the pregnant girls back to school. There has been increased support shown by development partners for continued learning, as well as through civil society organizations, traditional religious leaders, and youth actions, which have been undertaken in support for girls and women's education, as well as at community level through AUCF's youth alumni. Furthermore, there has been gender-responsive budgeting, which has been adopted to achieve better outcomes for girls through the costed readmission of pregnant girls in Zimbabwe, set at an estimated $123 million to the Revised Education Act this year in February 2021. Next slide, please. We will look on the next slide on what could be done better. Supporting girls' education during COVID can be done by integrating gender in public expenditure, learning from one another, ensuring increased domestic financing through targeted intersectorial support with other sectors. Because the issue is multi-sectorial, it is important to have other sectors on board, such as health, nutrition, water, gender, and social protection, amongst others. It is also important to carry out disaggregated data collection mechanisms and analysis of both qualitative and quantitative nature. It is just as important to ensure gender-responsive education sector planning through GRESP and led by the United Nations Girls Education Initiative, which has trained 20 countries since 2017. to identify the barriers and devise strategies and policies to overcome these barriers within education sector plans. As another strategy, we would like to introduce also the concept of gender intelligence as a key strategic approach, which has the goal of enabling women and men to better understand each other, appreciating each other's contribution, and seeing value in the differences and their differences in the workplace. And when transferred to the education setting, this concept provides for girls and boys with the tools to enable them to navigate gendered attitudes productively and with equity. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for your attention. Back to you, Marianne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ian. That was extremely important to hear. I think it really set the tone for the discussion. I especially appreciate how we ended on a note of introducing gender intelligence. This seems to be a first step towards thinking about gender as disaggregating our gender, thinking about it as something to mainstream in all education sectors, areas, and not just as a separate entity. So this seems like it's a really important place to start, is how do we become more gender conscious, more gender intelligent, more aware of this as a problem, and ways in which we can integrate it into the work that we're doing. So thank you very much, very interesting. And I would love to hear very soon what others also felt about your presentation. We're going to now have Mr. Shembodo from ADEA, the Association for the Development of Education in Africa, share some of the findings of the KICS Observatory report, especially as they relate to gender equitable school reopening and remedial learning. So Mr. Shem, over to you, please.
Thank you, Marianne. So when COVID-19 first hit, our shores as a continent last year, ADEA engaged African countries between the months of April and August to have a better understanding on how they are coping in terms of reforming their education systems in response to the pandemic, in terms of bringing in changes to existing policies and practices, but also in terms of introducing new policies and practices in response to the pandemic. So this engagement informed ADEA's own interventions in support of the countries in order to continue providing learning to as many learners as possible within the continent. Then from November last year to date, ADEA, together with its consortium partner, the African Union's International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa, hereby represented by Ian, who has just finished his presentation, and with technical support from the African Population and Health Research Center, better known as APHRC, and UNESCO Institute for Statistics, has been managing and continues to manage the KICS Observatory on COVID-19 responses in education systems in 40 GP partner countries in Africa. So the KICS Observatory reviews and mobilizes evidence around changes in education policies and practices in primary and secondary education levels in the 40 African countries. And we do this using the gender equity and inclusion lens. And we particularly focus on continued operations of education systems, as well as learner well-being, even beyond the classroom. The idea is to improve ongoing interventions and future interventions by countries that are aimed at strengthening education resilience. So far, we have released several COVID-19 related synthesis reports. These are around areas such as teacher training and support, education financing, learner well-being, and schools reopening. We are currently finalizing the report on learning assessment. So these reports are also accompanied by live spreadsheet trackers that people can access because they have data from countries as well as from partners. And we will also be conducting case studies during this 18-month project, which we have been informed may be extended further to the end of 2022. So today I would like to share with you some of the recommendations from the synthesis report, as mentioned by Marianne earlier, around schools reopening and looking at especially at the gender and equity lens and time permitting remedial teaching during the pandemic. So the first recommendation based on the evidence is around strengthening contingency planning to better respond to future education disruptions. So we need to ensure that the response plans that we are making reflect the most current research evidence and also the best practices to enable faster decision making as well as a more rapid response. And under this, those strategies that are being developed in such contingency plans must enable outreach to all children and stakeholders to ensure education continuity for all learners, as much as possible for all learners, because that is really the vision. The second recommendation is the need to consider the specific needs of the most vulnerable learners in the school reopening policies, strategies, and programs that are aimed at increasing the levels of re-enrollment in schools, because these learners face extra barriers in returning to school. And who are these learners? I mean, some of them are displaced and refugee children. Others are those children that are coming from hard-to-reach areas, from low-income families, and especially girls. So this means, under this recommendation, that we need to incorporate the needs of these groups of learners in a system-wide government planning and budgeting process, and to seek support from partners, including humanitarian agencies, so that we can move away from the tendency to leave the support of these groups of learners largely to the humanitarian agencies. So what are some of those strategies that we are talking about? There is ongoing back-to-school campaigns, and we are saying that those back-to-school campaigns should be sufficiently funded so that the communications that are going out for getting back to school, especially for vulnerable learners, can be tailor-made. And then there's also need to have strong and flexible school policies and support systems that encourage the return of pregnant teen girls. I think this has been mentioned by Ian, as well as the young mothers, and to mitigate against their future disruption of their learning. So that is really key. So, for example, as part of flexible policies, we could have systems that can promote the management and utilization of gender disaggregated data for all categories of vulnerable learners, and also looking at special needs learners. In terms of flexible school support systems, we could look at allowing flexible school schedules for this group of learners to cope. For example, if they are teen pregnant learners, to cope with childcare demands and to provide appropriate and consistent psychosocial support services to manage social stigma, which they may be going through, and to develop guidelines on how and where they should attend school. This is in addition to having systemic approaches of integrating the needs of these learners and providing some kind of social safety nets to facilitate access to additional supporting resources. The third recommendation is around teacher preparation and professional development. And the evidence leads us to conclude that there's a need to put in place additional professional development opportunities for teachers, and such opportunities and such interventions should have a strong element of psychosocial support and innovating incentives that can enable teachers, for example, to really take up this prioritization for vaccination, because we know that the numbers so far are not what was expected. So this range of additional support initiatives that are focusing on improving the health and safety of the teachers will help them to prepare to adequately support the learners during schools reopenings, including conducting those much needed remediation lessons to address the galloping learning loss. So what is the fourth recommendation from the report? And these are highlights. The fourth recommendation relates to closing the supply gaps through institutionalized engagement with the private sector. We know that the private sector really play and offer that private education using their investments and reaching out especially to vulnerable populations who are in underserved areas. And these are some of the populations that the public schools or the public institutions really do not cater for adequately. So such institutionalized engagement and support will ensure privately owned or privately run schools do not go under. And on their part as governments, and for the sake of sustainability, they need to continue expanding existing public schools or developing new ones in order to address issues arising from overcrowding, especially during the COVID-19 period and such like crises in future. And finally, there is need as a recommendation to encourage intra and inter-country peer learning around the COVID-19 education policies and practice responses. Why? Because these responses are new to our education systems. And therefore, there is need to foster greater collaboration among education management, as well as education learning institutions at the national and subnational levels. This can be achieved through strengthened community of practices, as well as leveraging those opportunities that are created by planned events in the school calendars. So these are just some of the few but key highlights of the report, which I urge you to get online and download and read so that you can really have a better understanding of how countries are coping with schools reopening, especially during this time. So thank you very much, Marianne, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shem. That was very helpful. And we will share a link to the report in the chat box. Now, it would be great to hear if the participants have some questions for our two speakers from the AU and from ADEA. So I'm going to ask my colleague Zamzam from UNICEF ISARO to facilitate any questions or answers. So over to you, Zamzam.
Thank you, Marianne. Colleagues, thank you very much for your presentations, Mr. Ayan and Shem. I'd like to open the floor now for colleagues to ask questions. Just to have a system, we'd ask you to raise your hands when asking a question. But yes, we'd like to just open the floor with the first questions coming in. Any questions from anyone, participants? Okay. Yes, apologies if I can't pronounce your name, Gruto. Please pronounce your name correctly and please put yourself on unmute and please direct the question to either Mr. Shem or Ayan or anyone else. Let us know.
Yeah, thank you so much. Mine is a general question to all of us. We have put too much emphasis on empowering girls and helping girls keep in schools. What about boys? Boys are also vulnerable. We have not done much to help the boys. They also need our support. What do we have in stock for the boys? It is just a concern. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if I can respond. Indeed, Gertrude, you are right, of course. When we talk about gender, we are not just talking about girls. And in the evidence that we have been looking at through our report, of course, we also realize that many of the interventions by the 40 countries, at least some of them, are also focusing on boys. They are more of holistic interventions. For example, we know of countries where, as a result of the devastating impact of COVID-19, including job losses, some of the young boys have rapidly become heads of households, and therefore they have to go looking for, income generating activities. And for some of them, the moment they tasted the sort of like the value of having money in their pockets and also, of course, managing the family, when it came to time to reopen the schools, some of the boys have opted not to go back to schools. And therefore, some of the campaigns we see in some of the countries are also including a way of really, trying to get these boys back to school. So it's really a whole issue of loss of income that is also enabling some of these boys not to necessarily want to go back. And then they're saying, if they can make quick back, why go to school? And yet we know that school will whether double or triple or even give them 10 times of what they're getting in order to survive. So I think it's a call that, the issue of boys should also be highlighted in the evidence mobilization. And this is a point which is well taken by us. Thank you.
If I could just also respond to Dr. Nami Baru, thank you for your question, Gertrude. We've worked together in the past, so it's great to see you here. I know that you're representing the African Curriculum Association. Your question is really key, and I think that Mr. Shem did an excellent job addressing it. We also know that at this time, girls are facing many situations that are unique to them, just like boys are as well. And some of the situations that girls are facing may have long-lasting effects on not only them and their health, their sexual health, their emotional, physical, mental health, but also the health of the babies that they raise as well. As we know that the mother is also oftentimes a teacher in the home as well. So it's been shown that girls who are educated, they have healthier outcomes for not only themselves, but their whole families. So there's something a little special about educating girls, as we all know, and there's many situations that have been exacerbated for girls right now in many countries. So the special focus on girls is still important, although gender inclusive and gender transformative and gender responsive pedagogy is not only for girls. Over to you, Zamzam.
Thank you, Marianne. Well done. I think you really covered that point there. I do see Mohammed Sharif's hand is up. Mohammed, please unmute yourself and direct the question to either the two presenters or to the rest of the body here.
Thank you, Zamzam. And my question was, I was part of developing the strategic education sector planning, and GPE and UNESCO were helping us. So I have seen and a report saying that only 10% of female teachers of Somalia are now in schools. So my question is how it is affect that the less female teachers in schools, the female students who are going to schools or who are have to become retain or remain in the schools. And is this a correlation that if we increase, for example, if more female teachers, recruit more female teachers, so is that help that girls to retain or to remain in their schools and continue their education? Thank you.
Just to reiterate, so Mohammed is asking if we increase the number of female teachers in schools, does it increase, particularly for girls in general. Mohammed, did you have someone in particular that you wanted to direct this question to, or?
I think you can give the floor anyone who can answer. Thank you.
So I'm opening the floor for anyone to answer.
May I?
Sure.
Thank you, Zamzam. Thank you, Mohammed, for your question. I do agree that to a certain extent, it does have a certain influence in terms of ensuring not only greater access, but also greater completion for girls in their education, because women teachers also somehow, some way also help as role models within the classroom, and also serve as inspiration for these young girls to also further their education. And inside or out of school, they also somehow influence those around their community and encourage them to also bring their girls to their classroom. So that also works as a key factor in making sure the girls' education is also promoted. But now, is it the only way? The first thing that I think of is also an additional ways in order for us to try and debunk gender stereotypes and assumptions of roles of whether girls should be in school or not, is also through the manuals and such kind of pedagogical instruments, you know, and being able to portray girls in school or in a scientific lab coat and so on. I hope that also helps clarify your question.
Yeah, if I may add just a short one. Yes, I agree, of course, with Ian, but also to add that we do have male teachers who are also champions of gender and inclusion, and therefore they can also really act as in a way as models. Of course, women probably have a stronger influence, but we also do have male teachers and leaders who also really champion girls' education. Yeah, just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you for the sum up of this. We'll move on to additional questions from the two presentations. Please raise your hand should you have any questions. Colleagues, just one more time, if you do have any questions, please raise your hand, as the point of this session right now is to create a discussion, a dialogue. Do raise your hand, do not be shy to ask questions for our two presenters. I do see a hand up. Samika Henry, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay. The actual name is actually Semakula Henry. I am a teacher and a counselor, and I work with the Ministry of Education and Sports in Uganda. I'm not asking a question because I came in late, but I've just heard somebody say that as we talk of mentors for girls, there are also teachers, male teachers, who are actually girl mentors, and they are male champions. And just to explain that in my country here, we have established a series of a panel of men, a number of men being involved in menstrual hygiene management for girls in order to support them stay in school. Because in one of the big surveys we made as a country, we realized that the failure to manage menstrual hygiene and health is one of the leading factors of girls pulling out of school or finding discomfort. So we have trained men to appreciate the issue of menstrual hygiene to the extent that many of them are involved in advocacy and making reusable reusable hygiene products for girls. For example, I'm one of the trainers in making reusable sanitary pads. And everywhere I go, I really encourage many other men to really get on board. How I wish that could be copied by many other countries listening into this webinar so that we can make the men involved and feel like menstrual hygiene is not only for women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think you highlighted a key point there that there is a need to involve men in terms of ensuring better education equality for girls. And I'd also like to just move on to now in terms of any other questions or comments that you may have to share. Please raise your hand should you have any comments or discussion points to bring up.
I think there's a question on the chat from
Yes.
Alphaba.
I do see the question on the chat. I'll go ahead and read it. Alphaba, if you do want to speak, please feel free to unmute yourself. But the question here is, what would you say were the best practices and examples that met the needs of special needs during the pandemic, particularly during the school closure? So I will open that up for the two presenters. Unless Alphabet.
Yeah, well, I can go first, and then Ian, you can come in. I think from our engagement, the evidence that we have engaged with shows that, of course, at the initial days before school reopenings, when governments instituted platforms such as televisions and radios, and especially televisions, some of the countries also had provision where we had, sign language interpreters, also accompanying the lessons, the TV lessons to learners. I know this is just one aspect of the special needs. And then later, we did have areas where, for example, I think it was Kenya, if I'm not wrong, provided specific functions in their cloud education platform, really for learners with disabilities. So we thought that was really critical. But of course, we also noted that we do have other players outside the public system, I think such as eKitabu, that provide apps, applications that address, that provide, for example, a braille material for such learners. So we did have, pockets of successes in some countries, but it is not an area that has been adequately explored based on the evidence that we obtained. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who raised questions and points. I'd like to close it now here, and you will have an opportunity to have more discussions during an open forum. And taking it over to Marianne.
Thank you for that, Zamzam. Everyone, we're going to now hear some practices and policies from South Sudan. We're going to be hearing from Esther Akuma. Esther is the Director General for Gender Equity and Inclusive Policies at the Ministry of General Education and Instruction in South Sudan. So I'd like to turn it over now to Esther to take us through her points. Esther, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Marian. And I know that COVID-19 has affected many children and many countries are affected. And it has actually hampered girls' education very much in all over. And in fact, South Sudan in their study of how many girls, trying to find out the number of girls who got pregnant, we had actually about over 4,780 girls during that period, which really pained us so much. But the importance of the presentation I'm making is about the cash transfer to girls. This cash transfer to girls has helped us at least to have the girls come back to school and be in school. In fact, with the cash transfer, we decided to pay the girls' second round when we opened the schools, and we reopened the schools, and we had to have the top classes, the finalist candidates, to come back to school. So the cash transfer supported them, and even some girls who were pregnant, since it was announced that they have to come back to school, were able to come back to school. And we had about 11 girls who were pregnant, who gave birth during the examination. So I would like to say that our enrollment, as of 24th November, it is standing at 2,589,061 learners enrolled, and we have 5,912 schools. So this is the number of the learners enrolled. Out of this 2 million plus, we have 264,910 of the learners are female, making 48% of this, indicating a significant improvement in gender parity in 2021, as you can see in the diagram here. And this is all due to cash transfer. The historical parity, gender parity, you can see in the diagram there, because I don't want to go through the diagram, otherwise it will take us the whole time. And as from 2005 up to 2013, this is when we started thinking of the cash transfer, and we started implementing in 2014. So you can see the difference and see the growth. You may ask why in 2014 the enrollment was low. This was when the conflict broke up in South Sudan in 2014, and many children, parents ran out and others went to be refugees in other countries, and others entered in the POC. So that's why there is a gap here, big gap, the drop you can see. A review of the historical data shows a steady increase in gender parity, growing from 21% in 2005 to about 48.86 in 2021. This is attributed to various programs geared towards encouraging girls to attend school. E.g., since 2014, the girls' cash transfer have been issued to eligible girls between primary 5 and secondary 4. The purpose of this payment has been to encourage enrollment, attendance, and persistence of girls through the education system. This is to retain them. So growth in number of girls. Again, you can see 2020 versus 2021 enrollment. So despite the ravages of the pandemic, a comparison between 2020 and 2021 data shows a growth in the actual number of girls enrolled in 2021. This is attributed to the following interventions. The directive from the Ministry of General Education and Instruction to allow girls that may have become pregnant during the pandemic to come back to school. This has boosted the enrollment. Distance learning through the radio, where the girls at home, but still they had the distance learning. Those who could not access the radio, the ministry had to take the recorded lessons down to the schools and use the speakers for the learners to at least, according to the pandemic protocol, sitting to make sure they are learning. Consistent radio and other media messaging on behavior change. We have what is called known as BBC media, which allow girls and children with disabilities to attend schools. And even the community are encouraged through this BBC media or behavior change. The payment of 2 rounds cash transfer while schools were closed, this has indicatively resulted in retention and growth in number of girls enrollment in 2021. Next. So the enrollment projection in 2021, the general depict in enrollment was witnessed due to the ripple effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, if the enrollment growth continues, as has been witnessed in the past several years, it is expected that by 2022, we could see the number of girls in school equaling or even or very close to the number of boys in schools. This is needed to keep up and various campaigns so as to realize this. In fact, what was said about the back to school campaign, this is done from time to time, and this is what is encouraging the girls to come to school. And the community mobilization that we do also make the parents to allow their girls to come back to school. Next. So other plans and interventions that we have. We are saying that we should continue with capitation grants for normal school operation given to all, not for profiting schools. We have the capitation grant that is given to the schools in order to improve the learning, to improve the school building and all this. So we need to continue providing the capitation grant, which benefits not only girls, but both girls and boys, including the teachers. This is done by the guests and government. The government pays the capitation grant to their primary schools, and the guest pays the capitation grant to the secondary schools. Under guest program, there is a ring-fenced fund for the setting of wash facilities. And this is because we have this issue of the pandemic where water is very essential. And we needed to have all the other wash facilities available. And specifically for gender disability to access the toilets and the washrooms. So this is being considered and it is being done both by guests and the government and other partners who are supporting education. Continuing to work in partnership with the representative of organizations of persons with disability to change public attitude and serve as the role models. So we are having a lot of program on having the children with disability back to school and making sure they are not kept at home. So we are educating even the partners on how to find and identify these learners with disability. Changing attitudes and behaviors including disability sensitization, messaging in radio programs, and communications. This is done. Lobbying for teachers' incentive payment to ensure teachers are sufficiently motivated. The issue of teacher is a very, very crucial, because when they are not properly taken care of, teaching will not be effective, and you'll find that most of the teachers may leave the teaching profession and go for other jobs where they can get what is.
Esther, we can't hear you. Could you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
I don't know when it was muted. Yeah, okay. So I'm saying lobbying for teachers' incentive payment to ensure teachers are sufficiently motivated. You know, with the COVID-19, things went up. The prices were inflated. So what they have is not sufficient, and this needs to be taken care of. Lobby for more funding towards teacher training and development, especially for female teachers. In South Sudan, the number of female teachers are very few. So we needed more female teachers to act as role models in order to persuade the community to send their girls to school. So this is actually what I can say that cash transfer has done for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Esther. You're exactly within time. That so rarely happens. So thank you for your presentation and for sharing South Sudan's experiences in improving gender parity in education, and also their future plans for what they can do next. So these are very holistic plans. They range from wash facilities to teacher incentives and training. These are quite broad, and we would actually really love to hear what you plan on doing in these areas within this next year. And we're sure that the KICS platform can actually support you as you carry some of these out. So please do be in touch with us now. You can consider this your induction into KICS. Be in touch with us, and we will support you working forward, our team to your team.
Thank you.
So thank you. We actually have gender parity in our speakers today. We had 2 male speakers, and now we plan on having 2 female speakers at the country level. So I'd like to ask, I don't know if Mrs. Tumisang Tambela is able to join us. She was having connection problems. So if she's not able to be here, I would like to ask Ms. Kawadzani to also to present on her behalf from the Ministry of Education. Ms. Kawadzani, are you present right now? Can you hear?
Oh, yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, and I have sent our slides to you so that we can beam them and try to stay within the 15 minutes. Sincere apologies from our permanent secretary. She's been looking forward to this webinar, and I will try and do justice to her presentation. So our invitation was predicated on celebrating the Education Act, which has been amended to include a specific section that girls who fall pregnant should be allowed to come to school. Now, this is our system at a glance. In Zimbabwe, our education system is organized under 10 provinces, and those 10 provinces have districts under them, which total at 72. We have 9,778 registered schools in Zimbabwe, and our total school enrollment is around 4.5 million learners, who are serviced by a teaching force of 140,000, just so you have the context. Next slide, please. In terms of the legislation, we've listed those. We won't go through them because of time, just for colleagues to compare with their own. But inclusion, gender balance, the requirements of persons with disabilities, the definition of the child and all that are catered for under the Constitution of Zimbabwe, to which the Education Act has been aligned. And serious correction, colleagues, we would love to be congratulated, but the real truth is we actually had a pre-standing position under policy circular number P35 that any child that falls pregnant shall be allowed to complete school. So that has always been policy. What we are celebrating is that it has now found a stronger voice with legislative backing. So we already have had girls that went back to school, is giving us another boost. Next. Now, in terms of gender parity in Zimbabwe, you will see that we are at near gender parity at infant level. Infant for us is 2 years of early childhood development plus grade 1 and 2. That's what we call infant education. As you can see, it's almost gender at par for male and female learners. Junior education is from grade 3 to 7, where we finish primary school, and there's our gender parity index. Lower secondary is for the first 4 years of secondary school, which are part of basic education, and you can see we're doing well. Upper secondary is optional for those who want to do lower and upper sixth form. Many branch out after the first 4 years of secondary. So that's us on gender parity. Next slide. As you can see, so what we did, we compared the year 19, because that was our last complete year without COVID-19. So we compared our gender parity index for 2019 with 2020, when we were in the throes of the pandemic. We still haven't got our 2021 EMI statistics. So as you can see, we've maintained our gender parity index through the COVID period. Next slide. Now, in terms of what concerns this presentation the most, the girl children and their access to education, we also compared our school census statistics for 2019 before COVID and 2020, so that we can track and compare the impact of COVID-19 on the dropout rate by gender, and the statistics are on the next slide. So in terms of reasons why we lost some children from the school system in 2019 before COVID-19, you will find the highest number of learners we lost are at the bottom. Financial reasons. Oh, back to the slide, please. Financial reasons account for the highest number. And if you can, as you can see, for girl children, more girls dropped out because of financial reasons. But if you look at pregnancy and marriage, there's a clear pattern that we lost more girls to pregnancy and marriage during the COVID era than before, as you can see from the table. Next slide, please. I think my slide person had, right. So statistically, in 2019, before COVID, our AMIS recorded 312 girls that had dropped out due to pregnancy or marriage. In 2020, when COVID was upon us, 523 girls were affected. So it is a point that we did have a significant increase in number of pregnancies. There have been other reports from other quarters talking about 4,500 and so forth, but this is what we got from the annual school census, meaning that perhaps some of the girls were not in school in the first place. We cannot reconcile the figures. Next slide, please. So our observations. In 2020, we closed our schools on March 27 before the end of the official first term. Schools remained closed until the three-phased reopening on the 28th of September, followed by the 26th of October, and then the rest of the classes on the 6th of November. So we lost that huge period like other countries. When learners came back to school, there were notable changes among them in the different environments, in rural areas, in urban areas, in farming communities, border areas. Everybody saw that the lives of children had changed. And there were common and different experiences for both boys and girls. And as a school, we had to address those to get things back to almost normal under the new COVID-19 norm. So having seen this, we also focus now the gender lens. And we found that boys, I heard one of my sisters saying, what about boys? We found in the mining areas, boys had been lured into the lucrative gold mining sector, and we were losing boys more than we were losing girls. We also saw the vulnerability of boys and girls in child-headed families, including those living with aged grandparents and so forth, who may need to help fend for the family. Yes, we took note of the increased risk for girls in terms of sexual exploitation within communities, but our police has been flagging the vulnerability of boys as well to sexual exploitation of late. We also saw that prior to COVID-19 and even now, issues about the dangers associated with long walking distances affecting boys and girls differently. And after the prolonged closure of schools, loss of confidence in succeeding for learners who don't have resources at home, and learners who actually spoke to the permanent secretary directly to say, we need career guidance. We don't know what to do with ourselves after school. So what have we done in terms of strategies? We came up with a strategy for the continuity of teaching and learning at all times, saying we will never again find ourselves totally closed with nothing going on like we did when COVID hit us. The key pillars of the adopted strategies for teaching and learning include syllabus compression to catch up on the lost time. We use the time to compress our syllabus so that we use the time available to catch up on lost time. I heard colleagues talk about accelerated learning. So we accelerated our learning through syllabus compression. We also adopted blended teaching and learning, meaning a mixture of in-school and out-of-school, at home, via radio, e-learning, just blended everything together to ensure that even if COVID comes back as badly as it did then, we will not close down teaching and learning. Radio lessons with offline access and hard copy resources, as I heard Sudan also mentioning, so are we, and I think Kenya and Uganda have it as well. We also went ahead with e-learning platforms, and right now we are really happy about the learning passport that we're doing with UNICEF. We also went a gear up on clinical and in-class remedial teaching, same as other countries have been saying, to save time. Next. This is in the classroom, but we also realize that outside the classroom, there are other things we need to do in terms of care and support for teaching and learning. So we have since strengthened our school-based guidance and counseling programs for the same things that our sister talked about, behavior modification and psychosocial support and all the things that children need to be whole. We've revamped our child protection committees at school level and linked them to the social welfare system, where the harmonized cash transfers and other social safety nets activated from. We've introduced an interactive radio program dedicated solely to the voice of learners, not adults, where we learners listen and respond in different ways to the expressed needs, challenges, and information requests of our learners. And we're using the theme of Fit for Life and Work, Learners 21st Century Survival Kit. Next slide, please. When we were finally allowed to reopen schools, having closed in June 2021, we lost another school term and we could only open on the 30th of August for examination classes and 6th September for the rest of the classes. We realized that our communities needed a boost. So after we've been allowed to open schools again, we took a whole of government approach and went into communities with the integrated primary and secondary education service fairs, where different government departments who have something to do with the right to education, access, and quality of learning came together and went out into communities under COVID-19 restrictive environments, where we use hailer campaigns, met in open spaces, meters apart, and deliver services. We are happy to say this has resulted in many children with disabilities, pregnant teens, those who are in underage marriages, and others who are at risk of falling through the cracks, actually returning to school. Next slide, please. And in terms of our way forward, planning from 2022 going to 2026, our next 5 years, we're moving ahead with just gender-based budgeting, mainstreaming, care and support for teaching and learning, comprehensive sexuality education in the curriculum, school health programming, including the homegrown school feeding program, menstrual health management and psychosocial support, clinical remedial support for struggling learners. And last slide. We're also using this assessment framework as a tool for gender equality. We're moving a gear up on career guidance and also moving ahead with community dialogue on enhanced child safety and protection for children against sexual exploitation and misadventure, but also to make it a more facilitative environment for girls that fall pregnant or prey to early marriages. We'll just end with a few pictures to show you the community outreach that we talked about, and we also have low-cost boarding to overcome long walking distances. We are enhancing our open and distance learning facilities. We are moving further with our partnerships, and we also capacity building on gender sensitivity for school leadership. And we want to learn about gender intelligence, so we incorporate this. So just a few pictures for you, and that will be our Zimbabwe presentation.
Thank you very much. We actually were not able to include the pictures because we had to start the webinar. So
thank you so much.
Alternatively, you could perhaps share one picture that you think represents the program that you'd like us to focus on sometime during the question and answer session. But we're going to have an open. Thank you. And also the same word of support also applies to your presentation. As the KICS team, we would love to hear about some of these initiatives that are planned for this next year. So we hope to be in touch with you on an ongoing basis to learn about what you're doing and how these continue to play out. And our team will support you in that. The KICS platform is meant for this purpose. So now we have some time for questions and answers. I would like to also ask my colleague Hundessa, who has joined from the KICS team, to come in and also announce the survey before we get to the questions. So I'll just turn it over to Hundessa to announce the survey for this session.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you all participants. Let me share with you the survey too. This is what the survey looks like. I have put the link of the survey within the chat box. You can find it there. Just the purpose is that you all are aware of it is just to get your insights and experiences and how you find the workshop so that we will have some kinds of feedback and information from your end. It doesn't take you more than 5 or 10 minutes. So just there are 10 questions. The first question is which country you are from. So there is a down box. You can choose from that. And there is the question which says an organization where you can, which you represent, is that Ministry of Education or local education group representative, or if there is other, you mention is that, and what is your role or designation from the organization you came? Is question number 3.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but since we only have about 14 minutes left, I think we can move into questions and answers that they may have about the presentations. But thank you for showing us the survey. I think they can read the questions on their own as soon as they click on the link. I'll just take over from here and ask everyone to think about some questions that you may have for the speakers. We have just heard from South Sudan and from Zimbabwe. Now, this is an open forum. We have about 10 minutes, not the original 30 like we had hoped, but that's okay. The nature of things are such. We have about 10 minutes for an open forum now, and it would be really great if you could raise your hand these 2 questions. So as you can see, there's some suggested questions are, what promising practices are happening in our countries and contexts? And what makes these practices promising? So do we know about their effects yet? Do we have some evidence on what has been working well? And if we don't have promising practices, maybe we have opportunities. Is there a policy window or an opportunity to improve an area for girls' education and for gender transformative education for both girls and boys in our countries? Like these questions or others that you may have, and ask that you raise your hands now. It's an open forum, so feel free to contribute. We have a lot of countries feel shy. See, Mr.
Thank you, Marianne. First of all, I think I want to take note of the service fairs initiative by Zimbabwe with the built-in community dialogue. I think that is a practice that is probably worth, extending to other countries. And I think it has the potential really to reach, the most vulnerable girls probably in a more stronger way. But I have 2 questions I put on the chat for South Sudan. Esther, you mentioned on cash transfers. You showed us, some of the statistics. So what I wanted to know was, what did the government do differently? And you also talked about a directive that was given by the ministry regarding re-entry of pregnant girls into schools. So is this a directive that was based on an existing policy, or what is really the policy on re-entry of pregnant girls in South Sudan? I think the second one is just an observation based on the trend figure. You gave us a figure on trends of enrollment between boys and girls. And I think you did mention that with that trend, the girls may just match the boys, but it would appear actually that the girls will outpace the boys with the trend that I saw. And so I was wondering whether this is a fair observation from my end, and would that mean that perhaps South Sudan should start thinking around focusing a bit more on the boys? So those are my two questions. Thank you very much.
Do I give an answer? Mariam?
Yes, please go ahead. There is a question for both Esther and for both South Sudan and for Zimbabwe. So either one of you can go first.
Yeah, thank you very much for these questions. And I would like to say that I'll begin with the last question, the question, what did the government do differently? In fact, we used to give the cash transfer once. And the difference was to motivate, because the schools were all closed. And only those who came back were the finalists, the candidate classes. So the government requested for these girls to be paid, the candidate classes only to be paid, an amount that was exceeding what they were getting at the beginning. So this made the girls come back, and with the order that was written, the order is actually coming from the Education Act 2012, which stipulates that girls are to remain or re-enter when they are pregnant. This was not being looked into most of the time, but with the COVID-19, the government sees it as an opportunity to make it work. But as I'm talking now, I'm working on developing the policy on re-entry, and we have already started working on that to make sure. And this order actually made the girls come back, and that's why some girls had to deliver even during the examination, and they were taken care of by the government. Their examinations were taken to them even up to the hospital where they delivered. And again, the opportunities after the schools were closed and all this crisis, during this crisis, there are other ways. That's where we had the e-learning video for these lower classes. But for secondary school, we had the e-teaching where they could open and hear the teacher teaching and could be able even to ask the questions. The ministry and the network people agreed that the questions that the learners would ask would be free. They would not be charged, the telephone owners. So the learners were able to ask questions, and they were able to do this without any charging. Again,
Esther, I'm so sorry, but can you please wrap up your comments? We have more questions coming in. Can you please make it very brief?
Yeah, and I think the last one is actually trying to say that we had the materials rewritten and given for the teachers to produce the learning materials, especially when the lessons were recorded and sent to the various parts. You know, in South Sudan, there are some areas that are not accessible. So we have people who are on the ground, and we try to make sure where the partners are, these things are reached. This is what I can say at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Let's give the Zimbabwe presenter a moment to share. There's quite a few questions in the chat box. Shem, I believe you had a question as well for Zimbabwe. Would you mind reiterating that question very briefly?
Yeah, actually, it was an observation of what could potentially be a good practice.
Okay.
The use of service fairs. I think that's the name. Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, we do have a question for Ms. Kwadzane. The question is from Leah from Malawi. Thank you for your eye-opening presentation. My question is for the Zimbabwean presenter. How do you compress the curriculum to speed up the teaching and learning without compromising the quality of the quality of acquiring knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes among the learners?
Thank you very much. Briefly, the concept it borrows from the teaching across the curriculum and looking at the thematic linkages among learning areas, where, for example, if a concept of time is taught in geography, it need not be repeated in mathematics. It need not be repeated in literature. Okay. So under syllabus compression, curriculum experts actually looked at the accelerated learning approach used in andragogy, in adult learning, and applied it to primary and secondary education. And then after compressing the syllabus to ensure that no concept is left hanging, they then moved on to training teachers on how to deliver the compressed syllabi using the spiral approach. And it works. And this might be one of the things where partners may, fellow countries may want to come and actually share how it is done. It took a lot of work and it is working. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kwadzane. There's a question from a board tour from the Ministry of Education in South Sudan to the general participant group here. Does any country have plans to support or practices to support girls in hard to reach areas or in remote areas? So this is a KICS platform for sharing good practices. So are there any countries that are facing success in supporting and reaching hard to reach vulnerable girls?
If I may come in from Zimbabwe, we have a number of initiatives supported by different partners, actually using the education management information systems to target those areas, like areas with low primary to secondary transition rates, areas with low attainments, or targeting certain learning areas, or areas where there are more child marriages than others. And yes, there are success stories to tell. There's not much time, but yes, there are quite a number of initiatives we're doing with a number of partners like World Vision, CAMFED, and a few local initiatives which have made a difference. Thank you.
Okay, and very briefly, last question for South Sudan. How do you coordinate the disbursement of the stipends to the girl child? What is the frequency of the cash transfer? Is it monthly or on a terminal basis?
Thank you very much, Marian. I think what we do is we don't have banks all over the country. We have only very few banks situated in the towns. Now, we have the bank that wins the bidding will contract the pay agent, and this pay agent will move from school to school, paying the girls. We validate, first of all, we start by enrolling the girls, validating them, and ensuring that they are the girls who are in schools. After that, we contract the agent. The agent will go and pay the girls with our staff from the national ministry and the state going down with the pay agent to monitor who they are paying. The payment is done only once. And now we have thought of paying twice, because during for the candidates, they will get twice, because we need to prepare them to get ready for the examination. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. I would now, I know that there are more questions, and we're going to have to, what we can do is that since there's a lot of comments and questions coming in the chat box, what we can do is put them into one document and send them out to everyone after this, when we send out the email thanking everyone for attending this session, because there's a lot of points here that shouldn't be lost, some suggestions as well. So I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Gabriel. Gabriel's going to end by showing us some resources that we can turn to when we're looking at gender equity, learning more about this area, maybe becoming more gender intelligent, as Mr. Ian has reminded us in the chat box. So over to you, Gabriel.
Thanks so much, Ariane. So I will briefly be sharing some knowledge resources that is available to participants, and I will just provide a brief summary as to where you can find it and how you can access it. So I will share my screen. So our digital repository, as I'm sure some of you may have heard already, was launched in December 2020 to facilitate the exchange of knowledge and resources and education in the hub's 18 member countries, including stakeholders and the general public. It's uniquely focused on evidence from the countries that are covered by our hub across East, West, and Southern Africa. And we've collected and curated more than 200 documents from 18 countries with more than 50 general and country-specific resources in gender equality in and through education, as well as equity and inclusion. And so just to get a sense of the sorts of resources that we have under each thematic area, we have publications from the Forum for African Women Educationalists, BVOP, Gender and Inclusion Education, as well as the African Union International Center for the Education of Girls, all within gender equality in and through education. For equity and inclusion, we have publications from World Inequality Database on Education, as well as Profiles Enhancing Education Reviews. So I'm briefly going to show how you can access digital repository. So if you go to our website, which is icba.unesco.org, and we will share that link in the chat, you can go to the digital repository over here. So that's the first thing. And once you're in the digital repository, you're able to find, first of all, country-specific resources. So example, if we go to Kenya, and then we go to early gender equality and into education, we can find publications from the Forum for African Women Educationalists, as well as specific documents from UNESCO and Pierre. And for more general resources, you can scroll down and you can find the resources that I have mentioned before. And so I'll share the link in the chat just so everyone can see it for themselves. And if there are any resources that are missing that you think would be helpful or useful, please do feel free to share with us, and we will upload it, or especially particularly national documents related to these areas, we would be very happy to share them on this digital repository. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. And so I will, we usually end our sessions with some music, so I will continue in that vein. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for attending today. We thank you for coming and sharing your practices, your policies, and your plans on how to better reach and teach the girl child in Sub-Saharan Africa, especially during the pandemic, but beyond the pandemic as well. So we thank you for coming, and we really hope that you stay in touch with KICS and that you come to the December 7th session on preventing school-related gender-based violence, that we will also share the link with you again when we send out the thank you for today's session. So please be in touch. The conversation has only started. It has not ended with the end of this webinar today. And we hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.